theme was a new challenge for the new decade. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I think it means more regulation based on what I saw in the 1980s. And we actually now have Jimmy Carter making an official proclamation about Earth Day, that we should all be embracing it, and we should be embracing the nation's environmental goals, specifically the National Environmental Policy Act. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that is sort of the Magna Carta of environmental regulation. And so I kind of like this joke here. What it did is it creates environmental impact statements. On average, those statements are 600 pages long. This is every time you go to do an environmental project. It takes about 2 years for the government to review, and then it goes to the courts and basically creates an enormous logjam in the entire system. So you might ask, well, what's so wrong with regulation, right? If our air quality is getting better, our water's improving. But we always have to ask at what cost and with what constraints. Some of the best economists out there have argued that the U.S. could have achieved our present level at a quarter of the cost. And they've also showed long-term trends that show air quality was improving at the same rate before the Clean Air Act hit as after. And same with water quality. Going to move on to 1990. This really surprised me. This is a new talk for me, so I was looking up some research, doing a little research, and landfill space was actually the #1 issue in 1990. I can see that being an issue here in the Bahamas, but not in the United States. We have Al Gore, of course, commenting on this. He seems to always be in on the action. We have Isaac Asimov. Almost all the existing landfills are reaching their minimum capacity, and we are running out of places to put new ones. One of the scholars, Dan Benjamin at PERC, where I spend most of my time, has spent the last 20 years looking at garbage, landfills, recycling. We actually call him the trash man. And he estimated that all of the garbage in the United States could be fit into Ted Turner's ranch, which is 30 miles from where we live, for the next century, with 50,000 acres left over for his bison. It's a 110,000 acre ranch. That gives you a sense. The National Solid Waste Management Association, this is what they have to say about landfill space. 1995, we stood at 14 years, 2001, 18 years, 2010, it's up to 20 years. Why? They're getting bigger, they're getting more efficient, they're run by private corporations. They're actually turning trash into gas now, creating heat, creating energy. One of the best examples, I think, is the Fresh Kills landfill. I don't know if you've heard of that in New York City. It was one of the biggest in the world, at one point reaching 17 stories high. It's been closed for 10 years now, and guess what they're doing with it? They're creating a giant park, and they're creating energy for Staten Island. So these huge concerns are actually have been turned into assets in a way now. And now on to our favorite topic, global warming. 2000, green starts to be in, right? We've got DiCaprio. Sorry, honey, I had to put him up there. The eco-hunk. And he's starting to make claims. All sorts of celebrities are starting to make claims about Earth Day. He was actually the host for Earth Day in DC, and making the typical predictions that you hear about: typhoons, hurricanes, floods, insect-borne diseases, and now recently I've even heard the volcano is due to global warming. I couldn't resist this photo, and I hope none of you are fans of Al Gore, but so is the global warming hype running out of greenhouse gas? Is every scare that we hear discrediting the movement, especially when it's coming from celebrities, and then pile that on top of the Climategate scandal, on top of the Copenhagen fiasco, and what are we seeing? Well, I believe it is starting to backfire, and that concerns me. People are losing their interest in the environment. We got a recent Gallup poll reported that global warming was a bit of a yawn to most Americans. We got Pew survey listing global warming as number 20 in the top 20 issues. So it's starting to lose some steam. So I'm just going to skip over it. Just kidding. What do we actually know? We know the Earth's temperature has risen about 1 degree Celsius over the last 100 years. We know we can't stop it. Even if emissions were zero, we can't stop it. We know that cutbacks can increase human poverty and suffering. And we know that global warming is only one of the problems confronting humanity. There's an author, Bjorn Lomborg, who wrote a book, Cool It. I would encourage you to read it. What he did is he got a bunch of economists from all over the world. I think 5 of them were Nobel laureates, and they figured out what the biggest problems of the world are today. And global warming was one of them. They had 23, I believe. And then they ranked them based on the solutions they had, like dollar for dollar, what made the most sense. And global warming came in last. Not to say that it's not an issue, but to say that we don't have any good solutions, especially government solutions for global warming. Rather, things that we can fight are malaria, which half the world is actually exposed to. There were 250 million cases of malaria last year, just to give you a sense. 1 million, mostly children, died of malaria. That's something we could spend a lot less than we're spending on global warming, which is in the trillions, and have a huge impact. Or HIV/AIDS, 1 million people died of AIDS last year, and that's the most productive section of society that we're losing. But if we are going to keep spending the trillions on global warming, maybe we should refocus a bit. Rather than carbon rationing, maybe we should keep working on R&D. And last few years, money has been going down for research and development, when we should be thinking about how can we create solar panels at a cheap enough price that India can buy them. That would have a huge impact. Or what about nuclear power that has zero emissions? Or preparing to adapt and cope with the effects of global warming. I mean, even creating wheat and corn crops that are drought resistant. I put up this photo of the grapes just because there are countries that are already adapting. I guess grapes are like the canary in the coal mine for global warming. They're very sensitive to temperature. So of course Germany is now producing more Merlot, more Cab, and doing quite well, sort of stealing the profits from France. I'm going to move on from global warming for now. So here we are, Earth Day 2010. Given that the global warming hype is running out of gas right now, the real focus we're seeing right now is on green jobs. Here on Earth Day Network, just a couple days ago, green jobs are a win-win-win for the economy, the worker, and the environment. We have Van Jones, a former White House green jobs guru, stating, "We imagine formerly incarcerated people moving from jail cells to solar cells, helping to harvest the sun, heal the land, and repair their own souls." Well, that all sounds nice, but if you're kind of thinking it sounds too nice to be good to be true, I think you're right. We've had a couple senior fellows at PERC team up with a bunch of other fellows in the United States, and they looked at the 4 major proposals out there pushing for green jobs. And they came up with a whole list of myths, but I just want to run through a few with you. Myth 1, creating green jobs will boost productive employment. Fact, green jobs estimates using poor models based on dubious assumptions included huge numbers of administrative positions that do not produce much output. Myth, the world economy can be remade by reducing trade, relying on local production, and lowering consumption without decreasing our standard of living. Fact, no nation can produce everything citizens need or desire. I'm sure you're very aware of that here in the Bahamas. Myth, government mandates are a substitute for free markets. Fact, of course, companies